When the angels decided that I had seen enough of the demons at work in this physical world, I was taken back into the seventh heaven just by passing through the dividing dimension wall. Once back inside the second heaven, my escort guided me in the direction of the third heaven, and I was happy at last. After all, this was where I had wanted to go all the time. Even at this stage, my physical life was still my primary concern. Suddenly, we came to a most beautiful place. I know that I've already reported how terrible the second heaven was, so that you can imagine how surprising it was to find anything beautiful over there. God would not allow me to retain the memory of why this place was so beautiful. I do remember that it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. This place looked like a tunnel, a roadway, a valley, or some sort of highway. It had a most brilliant light all its own, and was completely surrounded with an invisible shield. I knew that the invisible shield was the protection of the Holy Spirit. Walking in this tunnel, or along that roadway, or valley, or whatever, was what appeared to be human beings. I asked my escort who they were. He told me, "They are saints going home." These were the departed spirits of Christians who had died on earth, and they were going home. Each of these saints was accompanied by at least one guardian angel, and some had a whole host of angels with them. I wondered why some saints were accompanied by only one angel, and others had many. I was watching as the saints passed through the way that all saints must take to go home. Here it was, the passageway from earth to the third heaven. I found that only authorized spirits were allowed in that tunnel. No demon was permitted there. When my escort had finished explaining to me about the homeward trip of the saints, I started into the tunnel. The angel stopped me and told me that we had to travel alongside the tunnel and not inside of it. I traveled, therefore, parallel with, but outside the tunnel where the saints were. While we were traveling alongside the tunnel, we did not move at the speed of thought. Instead, we traveled as if floating on a cloud. In other words, there was no cloud, but the mode of traveling felt as if I was floating on a cloud. I could see the saints at all times moving along inside the tunnel. They were in the form and shape of humans, yet I could not detect any race, age, or sex. They were all clothed alike, with the garments appearing to be made up of two pieces. There was a blouse or shirt and a pair of slacks. The color of the garments was a pastel baby blue, with one of the garment pieces being a shade lighter than the other piece. The blue was so light that it was almost white. I realized that these saints I was viewing had not yet received their glorified body, because that must wait until the first resurrection. At first I was disappointed that I was not permitted to travel in the tunnel with the saints, but the disappointment was eased when I was told that we were going to the same place they were going. After all, I knew that if my physical life was going to be extended, I would have to appear before God. Even now, my physical life was still the uppermost thing to me. As we traveled along, I noticed all around me that the demons were beginning to drop behind. The gates came into view, and the closer we got to the gates, the farther behind fell the demons. When we arrived before the gates, there were no demons in view. Although the gates of the third heaven opened out into the second heaven, no demon would come close.